Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Today, I stumbled over an article written by an intellectual, and the title caught my attention. And then I read a few paragraphs, and I said that it could be a great video to make to expose the level of the United States educational system, because we have here a person. He's an educator. In this case, he wrote for the Conversation, and his name is, let me put my goggles, Colin Kohlhaas, and he's a doctoral candidate in history at Birmingham University, State University of New York. The title that caught my attention is Today's White Working Class Young Men Who Turn to Racist Violence Are Part of a Long, Sad American History. This is the title, and I will show you the face. Always put a face to the name. Title, and I will show you the face of the author. Right here, author, his name is Colin Kohlhaas, that guy over there, and I will even make it bigger for you to see because he has a very interesting face. Now, let's see Mr. Colin Kohlhaas. Barely can smile, but hey, at least he tries. I will read for you his profile, all right, and I will tell you what his education is. Why do I do this? I will show you how Mr. Kohlhaas thinks, and he writes an article. Remember, this guy is not a nobody. Let me show you. Why do I say that? I will tell you his education here. I specialize in United States history with a focus on ethnicity and, brace yourselves, masculinity in the 20th century. My dissertation, and I'm quoting, "We intend to run this district, Irish American violence in Chicago, 1880-1922, analyzes Irish American working class violence in Chicago during the late 19th and early 20th century." All right, so he has a, right here, Master of Arts from Birmingham University, State University of New York, and in 2015, West Virginia University Bachelor of Arts. So in 2019, he got his master, and I know how that works. Now let's go back to the article, and I'm going to show you how this guy is going to have a dissertation, and he's going to be a doctor. He's going to have a PhD. That guy. I met a lot of them. I went through the university system in Romania and in the United States of America. And there were a few things in the United States of America, particularly, and Romania, that were hit on our heads. And this was credible sources, right? So you have to always put your citations. No plagiarism, obviously, and produce evidence based on, they like this, peer-reviewed studies, which is some guys together, they write what, and they say it's peer-reviewed, peer-reviewed, peer-reviewed. Everything from outside you cannot use because it's peer review, which is us. So if we're 10 PhDs here, we are writing from one another, and then we can use, you, the students, can use what we wrote. Sources from outside, not credible, not peer-reviewed by ourselves. So let's start with the article. He starts like this. Mr. Let's see what's his name, Colin. I will call him Colin because Kohlhaas, let's say try Kohlhaas. In recent years, he said, it doesn't tell you what recent years means. 50 years, 20 years, 2 years. In recent years. So this is supposed to be a paper that informs us. In recent years, I would like to pay attention to the vagueness of his statements. He's a scholar. He's going to have a PhD. I guarantee you that. In recent years, if I would write such a paper in college in the United States of America, they will tell us what period exactly are you talking about, and what the evidence you will bring will be part of that recent years, 10 years, decade, 5 years, 3 years, because you're going to use studies and numbers, percentages to support your claims. So he already starts with this. In recent years, the United States has seen a surge of white supremacist mass shootings against racial minorities. First question as a professor would be, what's your evidence? And you say, well, from the past 5 years, which is recent years, or 10 years, there have been 50,599 mass shootings, let's say, and involved this number of people, the victims, these were the guys, and the blah, blah, blah. This is how you do it. He doesn't do it that way. Why? Because he's a activist. While not always the case, so not 100% the case, he doesn't tell us how many, mass shooters tend to be young white men. Remember, no numbers so far. So while not always the case, I would like to know, okay, out of 3,599 cases that you researched, Mr. Kohlhaas, how many were this? He's not telling us. He says, while not always the case. So you can imagine maybe it's 99% of the time. Maybe it was, 80% of the time. He's not telling us. Why? Vagueness. Mass shooters tend to be young white men. He should have it clear on how young and on brackets of age. Some journalists and researchers have argued that class and ideals of white masculinity are partly to blame. So this weak person, Mr. Kohlhaas, he says that some journalists, they are the experts, and researchers, some. I would like to ask, how many? 2, 3, 4? So you make a claim and you try to explain something, which is in the title, that today's white working class young men who turn to racist violence are part of a long sad American history. All right? And here he says, some journalists. All right, how many? You have, let's say, 20 million journalists. Out of the 20 million journalists, how many are there saying that? 2? And how many are not saying that? He's not bothering to tell us. He says, and researchers, the same way. How many? You're going to quote 1 or 2. Have argued that class and ideals of white masculinity are partly to blame. So don't be yourselves, become something else. Basically, he wants to work against nature. The communists tried and keep trying the same thing. That's why they will always fail. The same with this weak link, Kohlhaas. This argument is not surprising. So he already says it's not surprising. He already makes the case from his statements so far, based on journalists and researchers. He says this argument is not surprising. He already reached a conclusion, not surprising. And I'm going to tell you why, he says. Throughout U.S. history, white men's anxieties over their manhood, he says, and social class help explain many violent attacks on black people, whom the perpetrators blame for denying them their rightful privileges. I have a question for this future professor that's going to teach your children. Do black people have masculinity? Yeah. And they will never use it as white people use it? And then why? Because why? These are weaker, the other guys are stronger. What's the connection? Nevertheless, again, social class. I use just black people, as he says over there, because he gets on that one. But we can use any kind of race or ethnicity. Right? But it seems like only one is the something wrong with. Anyway, so here it is. And he says, such was the case, and he's going to give us 2 examples. So he's going to make the case, he's going to make all his dissertation, let's put it this way, based on 2 cases. And he's going to give a case from 2015. I have to remind this individual, this weakling, that we are in 2024. So that's what, 9 years? So recent years is 9 years now. And in 9 years, he's going to mention 2 examples. So such the case with Dylan Roof. I'm not going to read further. He did something awful. And his evidence is another one. In another case involving a mass shooting, he says racist mass shooting, Peyton Gendron, a white supremacist, he says. And it's another one, all right? And he says that was sentenced to life in prison for something that he did on 2022 murders. So he uses 2 examples. Right here, I will show you. One in 2015 and the other one in 2022 to make his case. Right there. The one on top is the one in 2015 and the one on the bottom is the 2022. So this is his point, which is in the title. Today's white working class young men who turn to racist violence are part of a long, sad American history. He's using 2 examples, no numbers, in the span of 9 years. There were more awful events like this? Yes, there were. They were all linked to what he calls white supremacists. He doesn't make the connection. He just gives us 2 examples. Now, this is awful. Whomever does it. My question is, the population of the United States of America is about what? 300 and almost 40. It's like 335 million people. That's it. This is the population of the United States of America, something like this. Now, he tells us about two events, awful as they are. 2 events to a population of 330 million people. If you put the population of the United States of America in the last, let's say, 9 years, the recent time, right? Then you have probably an escalation from 300,000 to 335,000, million people. So from 300 million people to 335 million people. So not a big difference. And you give me 2. You don't give me a statistic saying, okay, how many? And he says that's a surge. Awful as they are. Let's see what else. All right, let's see what else this guy says. So he gives us this, and he says, it's my belief as a scholar, he says, of U.S. history. Beliefs are not always based on facts. So he doesn't know, actually he's a young man, it seems like, but you don't say, I believe it's like that. You say, I think, I reason, I assess, because that involves this and information and evidence. You say, I believe, because beliefs are not necessarily based on reality. So he says, it's my belief as a scholar, he's a scholar, of U.S. history, labor, ethnicity, and masculinity. I don't think you are a scholar of masculinity. That Roof, Gendron, and other recent mass shooters in racist attacks share similar insecurities with their historical predecessors. So he used 2 examples and then he says, and other recent mass shooters. I would like to know how many. Give me the number. Where is your evidence, scholar? See, that's how he reasoned. And he's going to have a dissertation on whatever he says. And he's probably one of those guys, I'm just guessing, who Joe Biden canceled from us his debt because he studied masculinity. I didn't know you have a college degree in masculinity. Then I should have like 5 PhDs then, without even attending the school. Now, how idiotic that is. Anyway, and he says here, though finding solution is not an easy task. No, because you talk to nature. Recognizing the link between white anxiety and racial violence is a first step in addressing the problem that he did not prove there is what he says A in the title, right? Right there, that's a surge. In recent years, the United States has seen a surge of white supremacist mass shooting against racial minorities. Now that's scholars for you from the United States of America. And he writes, and he is happy to tell us that. And then he says class, masculinity, and violence. And he's gonna obviously talk about only a racial group that supposedly has this anxiety, because the other ones are just beautiful. Some of them are, some of them are not. The same in any category. But Mr. Kohlhaas has a Master of Arts, and he's gonna have a PhD. All right, my friends? And he goes to 1863 New York City draft riots, and he obviously uses 1 or 2 or 3 examples, and then he is doing that. It's awful. It will happen. It will happen. It happens both ways. But he's not bothering to show us or give us evidence from the other side at all. And I'm not talking about that particular group or that particular group. He makes it like only one group is responsible for these things, and one group, I know, is hurt in its masculinity. This is scholars for you. These are future professors with a degree in masculinity. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.